Welcome to EPG Pathshala. The subject Indian culture, paper museology, and the module ICOM. Myself, Supriyo Chanda, head of the Department of Museology, University of Calcutta, and coordinator of the paper museology. Now, our topic of discussion has been the International Council of Museums, shortly called ICOM. Here we will mainly discuss on the origin and activities of ICOM, various phases and growth of ICOM, and the role of ICOM for the growth of museum movement. ICOM is the highest professional body for the museums and the museum as a profession in the world. It was formed in 1946 under the auspices of the UNESCO, and it extends its activity globally through national committees, international committees, affiliated organizations, and other organizations. It conducts a general conference every 3 years and publishes ICOM News and Museum International, which is a very high standard journal, very regularly. The ICOM has completed 70 years of its establishment, and it represents the global museum as well. ICOM has developed in accordance with the global needs of the international museum professionals. It plays a pivotal role in defining museums with a new dimension. Chansey J. Hamlin was the founder president of ICOM, and it got recognition from UNESCO in the form of a cooperation agreement signed in 1947 with Hamlin's initiative. And if we look into the history of ICOM, the development can be divided into 7 very distinct phases, from the birth of ICOM, the growth, the crisis period, the flourishment, the competence and universality, and the new era which opened up to the Asia. 1947, 46, 47 to be precise, was very significant years, as because ICOM was established then, and the first meeting was held in Paris. Even until today, the headquarters of ICOM has been in the Paris, in the Rue Miolis, adjacent to the UNESCO building. The second meeting, that was the first General Assembly, was held in Mexico. Then quite a good period from 1947 to 1968 was a period of growth where 7 general conferences were held, and during this period ICOM was concentrating mainly on the educational role of the museum, the exhibitions, international circulation of cultural goods, and the conservation and restoration of cultural goods. The next phase was about crisis and evolution between 1968 and 77, because at that time the financial condition of ICOM was very, very bad, and by 68 it reached a critical situation. Membership dues were static for almost 8 years. Then the statutes were revised to expand its activities, and all members had given right to vote and stand for any ICOM activities. The period of flourishment actually happened during the 1977 and 1989. It started to extend the activities to the developing countries to respect the resolution since 1977. It started supporting to Asian, African, and Latin American countries for the training of museum professionals. ICOM became confident to fulfill the strategic goals with the support of significant conferences of 77, 80, 83, and 86. The policy on museums was finalized in the service of society and of its development. It adopted the code of ethics that is until today a reference document for all the museum professionals. The next phase is between 1989 and 1996. Unfortunately, that time we may be very proud being an Indian because one Indian, Dr. Saroj Ghosh, was at the helm of affairs in this period, first as Vice President, then President of ICOM for consecutive 2 terms. During this period, economic conditions were made stable. The deficit was finally absorbed in 1994. They adopted and implemented the fundraising policy very effectively, and ICOM ultimately gained popularity and reputation globally within its existence of first half century. And since 1996 on until 2004, ICOM was very determined to fight against illicit traffic of cultural goods. It developed a red list and 100 missing object series since 1996, launched the museum's emergency program, shortly called MEP, in 2002, as well as ICOM's participation in the International Council of the Blue Shields, ICBS, and ultimately ICOM increased its relevance in the global museum community as well as contemporary society. And since 2000 onwards, ICOM created a new working group leading in mind its mission to extend to the Asia. It is bent upon protecting both intangible and tangible cultural heritage, and the program has become an integral part of ICOM activities. It arranged its first general conference in Asia, to be precise in 2004 in Seoul, highlighting the Asian continents. And again, after a gap of 6 years, another general conference was held in Shanghai in 2010, and both these show the ICOM's lenience or attitude toward Asian continent. In fact, the next ICOM General Conference 2019 will be held in Japan again. The ICOM has its definite missions. The number one has been the establishing standard of excellence. leading a diplomatic forum, developing the professional network, leading the global think tank, and its international missions are combating the illicit traffic of cultural goods, risk management, culture and knowledge promotion, and protection of tangible and intangible heritage. ICOM works with a very solid administrative framework. The Secretariat is in the UNESCO House, Paris. It is an international team composed of 10 different nationalities to implement the resolution taken by the Executive Council, and it works according to the strategic plan and coordinates the committee activities. ICOM has got 30 international committees. The International Committee for Audiovisual, New Technology and Social Media. Name was changed in 2017. Earlier it used to be known as AVICOM. The International Committee for the Collection and Activities of Museums of Cities, shortly called as CAMOC. It is one of the international committees concerned with cities and urban living. The Committee for Education and Cultural Action, SICA, it is one of the oldest international committees with more than 1,000 members, and it is working to promote the development of museum education and cultural action as well. The CDOC, or International Committee for Documentation, is another very important international committee of ICOM. It provides guidelines for good practice and development of museum documentation. The International Committee for Museum and Collection of Instruments and Music, SIMSIM, promotes professional activities and researches related to collection of museums of musical instruments. The International Committee for Museums and Collections of Science and Technology, SIMUSET, it is not confined to the traditional museums of science and technology, but also to the science centers which are contemporary developments. Then the next committee is for Egyptology, called CPEG. It promotes collaboration of dialogues among professionals for the study, preservation and presentation of Egyptian collections, monuments and sites. The COMCOL is the International Committee for Collecting. It is in charge of collection and deaccessioning policies, contemporary collecting, restitution, and cultural property and good practices, which has become very important in current global scenario. The International Committee for Museums and Collections of Costumes, shortly known as COSTUME, devoted to study and interpretation of all aspects of collection on garments. The International Committee for Historic House Museums, DEMHIST, is an international platform for challenge in terms and solution to particular of conservation of management of historic house museums. The International Committee for Museum and Collection of Glass, again shortly called as GLASS, an effective body where curators and conservators of glass from around the world share their thought and carry out research on antiquity to the contemporary. The International Committee for Architecture and Museum Techniques, shortly called ICMT, it discusses on best practices and ideas about the architecture of the museum building, the techniques in the museum building, and the techniques of exhibitions. The ICDAD, International Committee for Museum and Collection of Decorative Arts and Design, it deals with the museums and collection of applied art and decorative arts, houses and historic monuments, etc. The International Committee for Exhibitions and Exchange deals with various aspects of exhibition development, circulation, and exchange. The International Committee for Museums and Collections of Fine Arts, ICFA, is a forum for professionals dealing with collection of old master and 19th century oil paintings and sculptures in museums and art galleries. The International Committee for Literary Museums, ICLM, is working to develop activities for literary, historical, or biographical museums and composers museums. The ICMH, International Committee for Museums and Collections of Archaeology and History, is dedicated to the museum archaeology and history. Another very important international committee has been the ICME, the Committee for Museums and Collections of Ethnography, which is dedicated to ethnographic museums and collections from local, regional, national, and international cultures. The International Committee of Memorial Museums in remembrance of the victims of public crimes is comparatively a new committee formed in 2001 to promote a responsible memory of history and to further cultural cooperation through education and using knowledge in the interest of peace. Another very important committee has been the ICMS, the International Committee for Museum Security, which deals with the very important matters of security and along with disaster preparedness. The next committee is for museology, shortly called ICOFORM. It is the major international forum for theory and practice of museology. It publishes a series of study series called ISS, which are of very high standard. The Committee for Conservation, shortly called ICOMCC, plays a significant role to develop the mind of conservation in every sense. The ICOMAM, the International Committee for Museum and Collection of Arms and Military History, is the only international committee of its kind dedicated to the preservation and interpretation of arms, armor, artillery, fortification, uniforms, flags, and medals in the museums. And the International Committee for Money and Banking Museums deals with numismatics and museums of financial and economic institutions or companies. The ICR, International Committee for Regional Museums, is fundamentally formed for regional museums. And another very important international committee has been ICTOP, the International Committee for the Training of Personnel. Its primary objectives is to promote training and professional development and to establish standards for museum personnel throughout their careers. And the Intercom, the International Committee for Museum Management, is concerned about managerial development in museums globally. Intercom is having its next annual conference in Kolkata in during 20 to 24 November 2017. The International Committee for Marketing and Public Relations, shortly called MPR, brings museum professionals working in marketing, communication and development. NATHIST, the International Committee for Natural History, is devoted to the conservation of biological and natural heritage in museum collections through exhibitions, conferences, field trips, etc. And lastly, the International Committee for University Museums and Collections. It's a body which protects the heritage under the custody of universities. There are many new international committees are in the nascent stage and going to be formed very soon. ICOM operates through 119 national committees all over the world, and through these committees, ICOM communicates between the General Secretariat and its members. Indian National Committee of ICOM is the national body in India which is presently under reconstruction. And it has got regional alliances too. There are 6 regional alliances for West African countries, for Arabian countries, for Asia Pacific countries, the European countries, the Latin American and Caribbean countries, and the Southeast European Alliance. ICOM operates through its General Assembly, which is held once a year. It is actually considered as a decision making instrument of ICOM. And every 3 years, ICOM organizes general conference in different countries. In 2016, it was held in Milan, Italy, and again in 2019, it will be held in Japan. It is held to gather museum professionals to have exchanges of ideas, some brainstorming sessions for the development of museum community as a whole, and also the election for the president, vice president, treasurer and the executive council members are held during this general conference. And one of the very important event of ICOM has been the International Museum Day called IMD. Since 1977, the ICOM is organizing this IMD on and around May 18. Actually, 18 May is a fixed date, but the country may reschedule according to its convenience. The theme for 2017 was Museums and Contested Histories, Saying the Unspeakable in Museums. It was a very interesting topic which was held throughout the museums, and ICOM status has been the basic document of the organization. The internal rules and the ICOM Code of Ethics for Museums define and complete these statutes. The new version of ICOM statutes was adopted in the last General Assembly in Milan, Italy on 9th July 2016. And the important document of ICOM Code of Ethics for Museum, it prepares the minimum standards of professional practice and performance for museums and their staff. All the ICOM members all over the world undertake to abide by this code. It was adopted unanimously by the 15th General Assembly in Buenos Aires in 1986. It was amended by the 20th General Assembly at Barcelona, Spain in 2001 and retitled ICOM Code of Ethics for Museums. It was further revised in Korea in the year 2004. To sum up, we may conclude by saying it was emerged, the ICOM as a unique network for more than 35,000 members and museum professionals who represent the universal community of museums. Anyone working in the museum or have professional training in museology or interested in museums, barring the person who are directly dealing for economic profits, can be members of ICOM. Keeping in mind this mission, ICOM formulates 119 national committees and 30 international committees, 6 regional alliances, 23 affiliated organizations to work globally for the development of museums. ICOM is a diplomatic body of experts from 136 countries and territories to actively participate in the movement as well as the development of museums worldwide. In gist, it was all about the International Council of Museums. You may go through the e-text, the link provided, and the bibliography to know more if you are interested. Thank you.